the fear and trepidation of buying Bitcoin while it's on sale. I want to walk you through my personal emotional response over the last 24 hours to the decision to sell the small amount of gold and silver I have back from 2017 and convert that 100% to Bitcoin. Because the emotional response I'm going through is probably the same one you are going through. And it's the same one millions of other people are going through, but it's also the reason Bitcoin will always eventually be higher. Okay, so I'm chilling, cruising along. I've got my allocation just the way I want it. I've got 100% of my liquid assets in Bitcoin. The only thing I don't have that's in Bitcoin is a little bit of gold and silver from 2017, but that's not even a liquid asset because it's such a pain to turn gold and silver into or out of any other currency. So I don't consider gold and silver liquid assets. Plus, I don't own enough gold and silver to make a material dent in the amount of Bitcoin I own. So I'm cruising along, everything's fine, and Bitcoin dips. And it dips down to 105, 106,000, 107,000. It does it a few times. I'm fine. I'm still happy. I'm still happy. I'm happy with my allocation. I'm cruising along. Everything is fine. And then Bitcoin starts dipping to 104, 103, 102. I start thinking about that gold and silver. I start thinking, hey, the market is being really irrational right now. It's tempting me with on-sale Bitcoin that it should not be tempting me with. Clearly, people are being irrational and being dumb. I was fine with my Bitcoin allocation, but if people are going to be dumb about it, then I will take some of that cheap Bitcoin off of the marketplace, just like I have every time Bitcoin's dipped for the last 3 years. Now, prior to the last 3 years, I was mostly buying Bitcoin high. I was buying it high because back in 2017 and 2018, I was new to Bitcoin. When you're new to an asset, you typically buy it when it's going up, because price is your validation that the asset is working properly and has value. So you tend to buy it when it's going up. But once more than 50% of all of my liquid assets were already in Bitcoin, you start changing your mindset. You start thinking, hey, I have a lot of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a huge part of everything I own. So if I'm going to buy more Bitcoin, once I'm past 50% of my entire net worth, 50% of all of my assets, once I'm past the 50% mark, you kind of want to buy Bitcoin when it's on sale, because at that point you're like, wow, I have a lot of Bitcoin. I don't have a lot of other stuff. If I'm going to turn my not a lot of other stuff into more Bitcoin when I already have a lot of Bitcoin, I kind of want it on sale. So I'm cruising along, the price dips, I start thinking about this gold and silver. The same way I did with my 401k last year. Bitcoin was hovering in the 60,000s and it kept dipping into the 50,000s in summer of last year. And so I started thinking about that 401k I had at Baumgar Corporation from 11 years of hard work between 2003 and 2014. I had not considered turning that 401k into Bitcoin because I thought I was happy. I had the allocation the way I wanted. Things were going to be fine, but it kept dipping. It kept dipping into the 50s. Finally, I was like, screw it. If you're going to keep dangling cheap Bitcoin in front of me over and over and over, eventually I will take that cheap Bitcoin off of your hands. And so, not your hands, I know you're not selling Bitcoin, but some people are selling Bitcoin, even though it doesn't make any sense. So finally, last year, it dipped into the 50s too many times, and at 57,300, 57,300, I converted my entire 11 years of 401k at Baumgar Corporation into Bitcoin at a price of 57,300. So obviously, I'm like, not quite double, but I'm like way up on that entire 11 years of 401k. I did not intend to convert that into Bitcoin, but it kept dipping and dipping and dangling in front of me. And eventually, look, any sane person's going to say, if the marketplace is stupid long enough, I will take that Bitcoin off of the marketplace. So the same thing is happening now. It dips just above 100, 104, 103. I start thinking about that gold and silver. Then it recovers to 107. I'm like, I'm good. What am I even thinking about? It's not enough to matter. Having a little bit of gold and silver is not a bad thing anyway. Then it dips back 103, 104, and I'm like, oh, it's going to do it to me again. At some point, this thing's going to keep dipping, and it's going to make me go buy some more of it. 1 second. So I started researching. I got some quotes from AppMex, the place I bought this gold and silver back in 2017. And I found out, of course, the fees are ridiculous and all this sort of stuff. But I start poking around. Well, last night, I don't know if it was last night. Anyway, in the last 24 or 36 hours, whatever, the price dipped below $100,000. And I'm like, I am done with this. If people are going to be irrational and stupid, then eventually I will take their Bitcoin. That's fine. If people are selling Bitcoin this low, I eventually will find a way to take some more of it into my possession so that I can allocate that capital into the world for the rest of my life. Mostly I give it away. I do Bitcoin education. I spend $25,000 a month doing Bitcoin education. I do a bunch of stuff. But if you're going to dangle cheap Bitcoin in front of me long enough, I will eventually take it. So after the price dipped below $100,000, even though it recovered immediately, I was like, I'm done. I'm done with this gold and silver. So I started calling around. SD Bullion, S as in Sam, D as in David. I don't know what it stands for. SD Bullion online. I got a good recommendation from somebody who's worked with them for a long time. And they were actually willing to give me a much better price than AppMex, which is crazy. The place you bought it should be the place that gives you the best price to take it back. Apparently, AppMex wants to sell you but not take it back. Well, SD Bullion has a lot better prices. So I'm going to ship all this gold and silver, which there's not that much of it, but I'm going to ship it all to SD Bullion, and they will wire me money, and I will buy more Bitcoin. What will the price be of Bitcoin when I get that wire transfer? I don't know. But whatever it is, I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm not sitting in US dollars, so I'm going to do it no matter what. Now, the reason Bitcoin doesn't always recover immediately from dips is because people like me don't have immediate liquidity. Getting liquidity in this gold and silver, by the time I'm all done with it, is going to end up taking like 2 weeks, maybe longer, which is why it's a bad money. It's not a good money if it takes you like 2 weeks to get liquidity. Bitcoin, I can get liquidity instantly, like boom. But it is what it is. Gold and silver are not, especially silver. Silver is a horrible money. Gold is the next best thing to Bitcoin, but it's massively inferior to Bitcoin. So because people like me take time to get liquidity on whatever assets are not already in Bitcoin, that's why it takes a little bit of time to buy up these dips, because not everybody has instant liquidity. Once upon a time I did, when I was buying with US dollars sitting in a bank account. Yeah, I can get access to those US dollars right away. I can pull the trigger immediately. But as you get a higher and higher Bitcoin allocation, it gets harder and harder to find things you can sell to get liquidity to buy more Bitcoin. But I want to walk you through the emotional response as well, because it's not just that. There's an emotional response to buying more. So as it dips, I start thinking about the gold and silver. There is fear and trepidation that comes with thinking about the gold and silver, because any asset you have that gives you diversification is like a comfort blanket, right? I mean, it's this little thing that says, hey, even if everything else doesn't work out, I have a little bit of this. It's like an emergency fund. It's like an old 401k. It's like a bunch of this stuff. And every time you take one of those things and convert it into Bitcoin, there is fear and trepidation that accompanies the decision. Even for me, who's been in this thing since 2017. What is that? Like almost 9 years now, eight plus years. We're almost in 2026. So since late 2017, all the way to late 2025, I've been in this thing more than 8 years, and there's still fear and trepidation. When I ship that gold and silver off for good, there is fear and trepidation that it's like, wow, I went from like 100% of my liquid assets to like 100% of all my assets. I still own my house. I still have a couple of vehicles, my daughter's car, my wife's car, my son's old van. I do own those. Those are not financed. So I have some assets, but it's not easy to refinance a car, for example. But with every decision, when you are buying Bitcoin and it feels like, wow, it's down 20%, or it was down 20%. Now it's not down as much. Now it's like 16 or 17% down from the all-time high. But when you're buying anything that's on sale, you're thinking, hey, it could go down more. Right? I mean, the little voices in the back of your head say, it's down. It could go down more. They're saying, hey, you're parting with one of your very last security blankets that's not already in Bitcoin. You already got a lot of Bitcoin. Do you need more Bitcoin? Why are you converting the tiny infinitesimal amount of diversification you have into zero diversification? Like, why are you doing that? And the answer is because I believe in Bitcoin. And because the marketplace is being irrational right now. And if the marketplace is being irrational long enough, some rational person like me is going to go try to fix it. And I'm going to go try to fix it by taking more Bitcoin off of the market from the people that are scared, the people that don't know what they hold, the people that are trying to trade it in and out of, dips and whatever. Forget that. I'm going to go take that Bitcoin off the market, and the marketplace can have my gold and silver. By selling gold and silver into the marketplace, I am shorting gold and silver in the marketplace effectively. And in exchange, I am getting more Bitcoin. I'm not actually shorting it because I don't actually owe that silver and gold back. When you finance something with the US dollar, you actually are shorting it. So by financing my Tesla, I am shorting the dollar. By financing my Sleep Number bed, I am shorting the dollar because I actually do have to pay those US dollars back in the future when they are less valuable. But I'm not actually shorting gold and silver, but I'm demonetizing gold and silver. When I sell that gold and silver into the marketplace, or when the dealership that I am selling it to sells that gold and silver into the marketplace, it will have a microscopically downward pressure on the price of gold and silver in the marketplace because someone who currently holds it will not hold it anymore. Meanwhile, it will have a microscopically upward pressure on the price of Bitcoin because some Bitcoin that someone doesn't want right now, I will be taking off their hands with the proceeds of that gold and silver. But again, I want you to understand the psychology and the emotional response. There is no money you can buy Bitcoin that's not painful to part with. Every single dollar I've ever spent on Bitcoin created some emotional response where I was thinking, this dollar is an emergency, access escape valve in case something goes wrong with my investments. So sure, it's losing value, and it might be losing value between 4% and 9% per year, but it's still something. And when you buy an asset, especially an asset you already have a lot of, and you buy it like I'm about to with proceeds from gold and silver, yeah, you're becoming less diversified. And it creates an emotional response. It's the same emotional response that feels like you're losing a little bit of financial security because you're losing a little bit of diversification. Now, in the long term, I think I'm in a much better financial position by owning more Bitcoin and zero gold and silver. But again, the emotional response you feel is like somebody's taking away a security blanket. It's like, ooh, I'm becoming less diversified, even though I have like almost zero diversification. But that's the way it is. Nobody who buys Bitcoin buys it with easy money. There's nobody who's buying it thinking, I don't even need all this US dollars. I'll just buy Bitcoin because it doesn't matter. Every dollar you part with creates an emotional response. You're trading one asset for another. It's hard. It requires conviction. Trading out this gold and silver for Bitcoin requires conviction on my part. Just like my 401k that went 100% Bitcoin at 57,300, I'm glad I did it. Just like the majority of my charitable giving funds that I converted to Bitcoin at $22,000 per coin, I'm glad I did it. It's the only reason I can be as generous as I am right now because I converted so much of my charitable giving funds into Bitcoin back in 2023. Otherwise, I would not have the financial resources to spend $25,000 a month on Bitcoin education and onboarding. The reason I have those financial resources is because I converted so much of my charitable giving funds at $22,000 a coin. At some point in the future, I will have a lot more purchasing power because the Bitcoin I'm going to buy with the proceeds of this gold and silver will be worth substantially more than the gold and silver would have been if I had held on to it. Even after I finish paying capital gains taxes on the gold and silver and all of that, the Bitcoin will still be worth far more. But there is fear and trepidation anytime you sell an asset and then buy something else with it. There is fear and trepidation, even for me, even if it's relatively small. There is some emotional response that comes from that feels like you're voluntarily giving up a comfort blanket. It just is. And you got to have the conviction to pull that trigger even when you have that emotional response, because I have that emotional response. And if I have that emotional response after 8 years in Bitcoin, you probably have the same emotional response regardless of how long you've been in Bitcoin, especially when you have like zero diversification like I already have. So that's the emotional response I'm going through, have gone through. Now I'm good with it, but that's been the emotional response is like a bell curve. As I've started realizing I'm probably going to sell that gold and silver for Bitcoin, then I get more and more conviction to I'm going to do it. Then I get at peace with the decision, and then it calms down on the other end of the emotional response with me just deciding, yep, I'm doing it. I've already decided I'm going to do it. So now the fear and trepidation starts, tapering off because I'm like, it's a done deal. I don't care what the price of Bitcoin is. I don't care what the price of gold and silver is. I've already decided I'm making that swap. And when the dust settles, it's got to take 2 days to ship to them. And then it's got to take 4 days for them to wire the money. And then it's going to take another day for it to hit my bank account. And then I will buy more Bitcoin. But the emotional part of that, of deciding what I'm going to do, is already waning because I've already made the decision. I made the decision I was going to do it about 3 hours ago. And so now I've just decided I got to do it, and all I got to do is follow through, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So anyway, wanted to give you an inside view of my emotional response as I go from 100% of my liquid assets into Bitcoin into literally 100% of all of my assets, other than my house and 3 vehicles that are not financed. That's it. That's my whole 401k. That's everything. As soon as I ship this stuff off, I will have 0 precious metals. Even though I had very little to even start with, I will have 0. And I'll have more Bitcoin, which is the best money in the world. And I've got the conviction to pull that trigger and feel good about it when it's all said and done. So that's the last 24 hours for me. If somebody dangles cheap enough Bitcoin in front of me long enough, I will find a way to take that cheap Bitcoin off of their hands. And I hope you are doing the same thing, because Bitcoin is on sale.